Let me ask you something. Do you know someone who looks fairly slim, no obvious belly, but then gets a shocking diagnosis? High blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, a heart attack seemingly out of nowhere. Or maybe it's the opposite, someone carrying visible weight who gets a clean bill of health every year. How is that possible? The answer is a type of fat that doesn't show up in the mirror. It doesn't jiggle. You can't pinch it. And a standard bathroom scale will never reveal it. It's called visceral fat. And after the age of 50, it becomes one of the most serious and most overlooked health risks you face. Today, we're going to talk about what visceral fat actually is, what it's quietly doing to your organs, and most importantly, the specific evidence-backed steps you can take to reduce it. This is one of those videos I genuinely wish more people would watch. So let's get into it. Chapter 1. What is visceral fat? Your body stores fat in two very different ways. The first is subcutaneous fat. This is the fat just beneath your skin. It's the stuff you can grab with your fingers on your stomach, your thighs, your arms. It's visible. It affects how your clothes fit. It can be frustrating. But research consistently shows it is largely metabolically harmless, in moderate amounts. The second type is visceral fat, and this one plays by completely different rules. Visceral fat lives inside your abdominal cavity. It wraps around your internal organs, your liver, your pancreas, your intestines, your heart. It sits deep behind your abdominal muscles, where no amount of pinching will find it. And here's what makes it uniquely dangerous. Visceral fat is metabolically active. Unlike subcutaneous fat, which mostly just sits there, visceral fat behaves almost like an organ itself. It constantly secretes inflammatory chemicals, called cytokines, and hormones that disrupt insulin, signaling, raise blood pressure, and drive systemic inflammation throughout the body. Think of it like this. Subcutaneous fat is a quiet neighbor. Visceral fat is a neighbor who plays loud music, parks in your spot, and occasionally sets things on fire. And after 50, your body starts inviting a lot more of that neighbor in. Chapter 2. What visceral fat does to your body. Let's be direct about the risks, because understanding them is what motivates real change. Heart disease. Visceral fat releases fatty acids directly into the portal vein, the blood vessel feeding your liver. This drives up LDL cholesterol, triglycerides, and blood pressure. People with high visceral fat have significantly elevated risk of cardiovascular events, regardless of their total body weight. Type 2 diabetes. The inflammatory signals from visceral fat impair your cell's ability to respond to insulin. Over time, your pancreas can no longer compensate. Blood sugar rises. Type 2 diabetes develops or worsens cognitive decline. This one surprises people. Research from the Framingham Heart Study and others has found that high visceral fat in midlife is linked to smaller brain volume and faster cognitive decline in later years. The inflammatory cytokines visceral fat produces cross the blood-brain barrier and promote neuroinflammation. Fatty liver disease. Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is now one of the most common liver conditions globally, and visceral fat is its primary driver. The liver becomes overwhelmed by the fatty acids. Visceral fat constantly releases into it. Certain cancers. Elevated visceral fat is associated with increased risk of colorectal, breast, and pancreatic cancers, partly through inflammatory pathways and partly through hormonal disruption. This is serious, but here's what I want you to hold on to. Visceral fat is one of the most responsive fat stores in your body. It is harder to see, but it is actually easier to lose than subcutaneous fat when you use the right strategies. That's genuinely good news. Chapter 3. How to measure it. You can't see visceral fat in the mirror, but you can estimate your risk with a few simple tools. Waist circumference. The simplest and most widely validated measure. Measure at your belly button level, relaxed, not sucked in. According to the World Health Organization, risk increases significantly above 94 centimeters, 37 inches for men, and 80 centimeters, or 31.5 inches for women. High risk begins above 102 centimeters, or 40 inches for men, and 88 centimeters, or 34.5 inches for women. Waist to height ratio. Divide your waist circumference by your height, both in the same units. A ratio above 0.5 is a meaningful warning sign for most adults. Above 0.6 is considered high risk. This measure works across different body types and ethnicities better than BMI. DEXA scan, the gold standard. A DEXA scan can specifically quantify visceral fat volume. If you have access to one through your healthcare provider or a private clinic. It gives the most accurate picture. MRI or CT scan, the most precise imaging, usually only used in clinical or research settings. For most people, the waist measurement and waist-to-height ratio give you actionable, reliable information today, no technology required. Chapter 4. How to reduce it, the evidence. This is the section that matters most. Let's go through what the research actually supports. Not trends, not fads, but evidence. Resistance training. This is the single most underrated intervention for visceral fat after 50. Not cardio, resistance training. Building and preserving muscle directly raises your resting metabolic rate, improves insulin sensitivity, and reduces the hormonal environment. That promotes visceral fat storage. A landmark study published in Obesity found that resistance training was more effective than aerobic exercise alone at reducing visceral fat in older adults. You don't need a gym. Bodyweight squats, lunges, push-ups, and resistance bands all count. Aim for 2 to 3 sessions per week. Reduce refined carbohydrates and added sugars. Of all dietary factors, excess refined carbohydrates and added sugar have the strongest link to visceral fat accumulation. They drive insulin spikes, which directly signal fat cells to store visceral fat. You don't need to go zero carb. Just meaningfully reduce white bread, pastries, sugary drinks, and processed snack foods. In multiple controlled trials, low glycemic diets reduced visceral fat significantly more than low-fat diets, even when total calories were similar. Prioritize protein. After 50, your protein needs actually increase, not decrease. Higher protein intake preserves muscle mass during weight loss, keeps you fuller longer, and has a direct thermogenic effect. Aim for at least 1.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight daily. Good sources: eggs, fish, legumes, Greek yogurt, chicken, tofu, cottage cheese. Sleep non-negotiable. Chronic sleep deprivation is one of the most powerful drivers of visceral fat accumulation. Less than 6 hours of sleep consistently elevates cortisol, disrupts hunger hormones, and increases caloric intake the following day. Studies show that people sleeping under 6 hours have up to 30% more visceral fat than those sleeping 7 to 9 hours. Fix your sleep and you change your metabolic environment. Manage stress actively. Because visceral fat is directly linked to cortisol, stress management is not a soft lifestyle suggestion. It is a clinical intervention. Mindfulness meditation, walking in nature, social connection, breathwork, and reducing overscheduling all measurably lower cortisol. Even 10 minutes of intentional relaxation per day has documented effects on cortisol levels over time. Reduce alcohol. Alcohol is preferentially metabolized as fat and is strongly associated with visceral fat accumulation. This is literally where the term beer belly comes from, though wine and spirits carry the same risk. After 50, the liver processes alcohol more slowly, compounding the effect. Even moderate reduction, say from daily to 3 or 4 times a week, produces measurable results. Increase fiber intake. Soluble fiber, found in oats, legumes, apples, flax seeds, and vegetables, has a specific and well-documented effect on visceral fat reduction. It slows digestion, stabilizes blood sugar, feeds beneficial gut bacteria, and reduces inflammatory markers. A study in obesity found that every 10-gram increase in daily soluble fiber intake was associated with a 3.7% reduction in visceral fat over 5 years. Chapter 5, the Weekly Action Plan. Let me make this concrete. Here's a starting framework for the week ahead. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 20 to 30 minutes of resistance training. Squats, push-ups, rows, lunges. Doesn't need to be fancy. Every day, walk for at least 30 minutes. Walking after meals is especially effective at blunting blood sugar spikes. Every meal, ask yourself, where is the protein? Where is the fiber? Cut 1 refined carbohydrate serving per day this week. Every night, protect your sleep. Set a consistent bedtime. No screens 30 to 45 minutes before bed. Keep the bedroom cool and dark. Once a week, measure your waist. Progress with visceral fat is real, but gradual, and weekly tracking gives you signal without noise. Small, consistent changes compound powerfully over months. You don't need to overhaul your life this week. You need to move the needle on 2 or 3 things and build from there. You are not too old. Your metabolism is not broken. Your body is waiting for the right inputs. Start with 1 thing from today's video. Just 1. Then add another next week. If this was useful to you, please subscribe. We publish evidence-based health content for people over 50 every single week. And drop a comment below what's the one change you're going to start with. I read every comment and reply to as many as I can. See you in the next one!